Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and I'm here with my buddy, my homegirl, Miss Yvette Carnell from Breaking Brown. How you doing today, Yvette?
Pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing really good. I reached out to you today because you sent me a link to something that Cornel West had to say about the state of black media. He said a lot of things, but I saw your headline on BreakingBrown.com where you mentioned that he said that this was the age of the sellout and was talking about black journalists in particular. But you also said that he said a lot in this Democracy Now! Interview where he's promoting his new book. Um, let's start from the beginning. Let's start from with this headline. What was going on with that? Why did Cornell say what he said?
Well, he was basically comparing where we are now in black media to where we used to be in terms of how that vehicle is used. And what he basically said is, look, to quote him, we have these journalists who go on TV and pretend that they have a point of view when really it's just a milk toast kind of, point of view that the status quo approves of. So they're not really saying anything. They don't really have a unique point of view. They're just kind of throwing some stuff out there that's totally agreement with either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. But that doesn't mean that they're necessarily vying for black people or for poor people or for working class people. They're just out there. They're just out there for the mainstream, and that's what he basically said. And he talked about another journalist. I think that I'm trying to remember the guy's name. I think it was Carl Rowan, and he said we're in like the Carl Rowanization of black media right now. And people who don't remember this guy, and I don't remember him because I don't think I was old enough to back in the 80s and and the 60s and all this stuff when this stuff was happening. But what he basically says is that this is the guy who mocked Malcolm X. This was a black journalist who was popular during that age, who talked about and said bad things about Dr. King. And people don't remember how popular he was. Now people look back at this, is it black journalists, and say, look at this guy. He was everything he said was wrong and he was just a tool. And we don't realize that we're seeing the same thing right now. We're seeing a lot of black people in black media as well as white media who go out there and just put talking points forward for the White House. And that's where we are. We're just kind of pimped out right now. We don't have our own space, and we want to get access to white media, or we want to be approved of, even in our black media spaces. So in that sense, we're not even free in terms of being black journalists, being black thought leaders.
Let's start. I think we can start this conversation from the beginning. He talked about so many things, and I think people should go to Breaking Brown so they can read your article and also see the whole video. But just this piece on black media, I think is very interesting to discuss. There's certainly a lot of intellectual slavery that has really kind of gripped the conversation in our community. Now, I don't necessarily know if we can automatically blame the mouthpieces of this enslaved dialogue as much as we can sort of look at just what's happened in a broader sense. You can even go back to say 1995 when, first of all, people have known for many years that independent black media has always been a danger to national security.
Yeah.
Right? They don't want black people sticking together. They don't want us educating ourselves. They don't want us rising up. That's why they put the drugs and guns and all that in our communities after Martin Luther King died, after they killed him. And this was proven in a court hearing. This was not something I'm speculating on. The government killed Martin Luther King Jr. People need to know that. But you move forward to 1995 when Minister Louis Farrakhan gathered 1 million black men together for the Million Man March. That's yet another threat of national security, because the very last thing they really want is for black men to really awaken the greatness that we have, to really unify and to really do the things that we know need to be done. So what a journalist had written was a great article where he broke down, I can't remember the brother's name, I need to look it up, where he basically broke down the fact that after 95, Clinton and working with the FCC signed laws that really sort of chopped away at independent black radio stations, basically shut down those really powerful voices that were local, that were in every city, and replaced that with the coonery that we're hearing on the radio now. You basically Clear Channel and all these other networks were allowed to go and literally suck up every radio station and play the same empty-minded bullshit on every station across America. So that you get to a point where people have become hypnotized by excessive materialism, self-destructive behavior, drug and alcohol consumption, all these other things that are being consistently promoted to young black people. So You fast forward that another 20 years and you look at black media today, we don't own anything. And when we do get a chance to own something, usually it's really white media and blackface. Most black online media outlets, for example, and I'm not picking on them, but the Griot is owned by white people. The Root is owned by white people. News One, I've had black people within News One complain to me that they say white people are running everything here. We can't get anything done. So again, I'm not attacking these outlets, but the fact is that if you really look around in the black media space, what do black people really have? Black Voices, owned by white people. BET, owned by white people. What is there that's really broad and national and strong that can truly speak to what's happening in the black community without having to be beholden to either corporate America, to white America, or to the Democratic Party, or the Republicans, or somebody else? Can you name anything? I mean, what's really out there?
But that's the thing. There isn't anything really out there. What you have now is just, and I see this in the wider array of the black community, but it has been extremely detrimental when we look at the era of Obama, because we didn't have anyone, except for like you and I and people like Dr. Cornel West, who had any kind of space to offer a critical assessment of President Obama. So what you saw over the last 6 years is what Dr. Cornel West talked a lot about, is black people going on TV and kind of spouting talking points for the Democratic Party. And we don't have anything. It's like you say, we don't have many, black platforms where we can come on and be independent and not worry about being cut off. So you have people who are willing to say whatever, spout the talking points. I mean, I have this YouTube video that has basically, it's a video of Sharpton, where Sharpton says basically the exact same thing that the Obama White House put out in the press release that day or the day before that day. That's not independent thought. That's not independent black media. And that's what we have, though. We have these, and, we have these Joy Reids, we have the Al Sharptons who come on and just their job is to defend the president. So we don't, and that's what your job is going to be if you're going to be on MSNBC. Just like if you're on Fox, your job is to kind of defend Bush or defend, conservatism. So we don't have this space. And the people those of us who are in this space and who work in this space are often shouted down by people who are outside of this space. So as far as I'm concerned, we're in a crisis of media right now. We're in a crisis of media in terms of black media, online media, in terms of black radio, in terms of all independent black media. We're in a war for our lives because what we have here are these people who are just kind of going along to get along. And another thing that Cornel West said that was very important, he talked about the commodification of black people in terms of we're not looking at the big picture. We're not looking at terms of what matters, meaning in life. We're looking at the next thing. We're looking at instant gratification. We're looking at, he calls it weapons of mass distraction. That's what we're looking towards. We don't have a big picture mindset anymore. We want the next car. We believe in this kind of myth of the individual to like overcome everything, all odds. And so you look at that, and as far as I'm concerned, that's sort of like a perfect storm for black people, because there's no one out there, with the exception of a few outliers like us, who are saying, hey, you need to take a second look at this person. You need to take a second look at this policy. You need to not believe everything you hear coming from black faces on white TV or black websites.
I agree with you. I think that what's really interesting is that when I've talked to Cornel about some of this, we see eye to eye on so many things. But it's funny that my background is that of a finance professor, and his background is he's a scholar in pretty much in sociology / religion / philosophy. That's the way I see him. And what I find is that when I hear what he's saying about the pitfalls of really blind, obsessive capitalist thinking, I'm thinking as a person who was deeply trained in capitalism and how it works. I mean, that was what we were supposed to accept in the field of finance. And I'm sitting there thinking, yes, I can confirm everything that you're saying. Capitalism is dangerous for America in the way that it's being practiced. Also, you now have a point where the artificial intelligence of capitalism, if you want to call it that, has gotten so powerful that that machine has really taken over our democratic process. And so as a result, you see people really incorporating the values of the broader system, which basically says if it makes dollars, then it must make sense. So that's when you get to the point where you've got BET, a white-owned network with a black face, that's basically promoting messages that they know. The executives at BET, they all know that some of this crap that they're promoting is bullshit. They know that it's harmful to young people. They know that people are being killed over this music, but they don't care because they've got their overseer saying, Negro, we need you to go out and make us another dollar. We don't care how you do it. Make us more money. And so then you expound that in, or you connect that to what happened with the FCC and kind of blocking out independent black media of all forms, and then you get to where we are now, right? You've got this black president, and if you are a black journalist and you're looking for an opportunity, what choices do you really have? You can't go work for the local radio station or even the local TV station. They don't really have money to pay you, and it's not really gonna. Those jobs are few and far between. You're trying to do what? You're trying to be the next Joy Reid, or you're trying to get that Al Sharpton, Melissa Harris Perry gig on MSNBC, because you can't really go work for Fox. I mean, maybe you can, but that's hard to do. So MSNBC and those sorts of outlets become kind of your only pathway to having your voice heard, and that comes with a contract. You know, I know that when I've been on MSNBC or interacted with the people at MSNBC, there's always kind of this understanding that I have to make sure I'm playing for the team, so to speak. If I'm not coming in there spitting those Democratic liberal talking points, then you don't just get identified as a defector, but you're really identified as an enemy. And what people didn't understand is that this was hurting black people. That if anybody had a legitimate complaint or legitimate issue about what's going on in the black community, and they wanted to bring that to either the American public, to the administration, or to whomever, that was going to get shouted down, because your job was not to bring your community's issues to the table. Your job was to play the party line and to pretty much do what the black elite was telling you to do. And so many people have gotten rich off of this, and it's absolutely screwed our entire community. This is probably one of the darkest eras in black history. The Obama presidency has been one of the darkest eras in the history of this country, because Obama's success has come at the expense of an entire community. It's not Obama's fault. As Cornel said, Obama is more of a symptom than the actual cause. But the fact is that there's nothing to celebrate over the last 6 to 8 years. And if you are celebrating, that's probably because you haven't really been properly educated on how this crap really works. That's my point on that.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. This phase has been detrimental, and you see black people who still celebrate President Obama without understanding. Do you understand that the President Obama will go on TV and talk about black men who aren't in their children's lives? But he won't tell you why these black men aren't in their children's lives. He won't tell you that they're in prison. And he won't tell you that they're in prison because even though whites have contraband, more contraband than black people, their cars are searched twice as much, that their communities are heavily searched. They're almost like war zones in some cases. He won't tell you that, but he'll just tell you that you should be in your kids' lives. And he won't tell you that part of the reason that you're not in your child's life is because you don't have access to capital. Everybody needs access to money. If you want to improve the life of a black person, improve access to money. They need jobs. They want to do a business. They need business capital. If you don't have access to money, people are going to steal. People are going to get involved in illegal activities. But Obama won't tell you that. The only thing Obama will tell you is that black men need to be in the lives of their children. And he won't provide you with the context for that. But he'll go to Morehouse, and Michelle Obama will go to what was it, Bowie State or wherever she went, and talk down to black people for not doing enough or wanting to be ballers or rappers or wherever. But they won't tell the whole story. The only thing that they will do is finger wag to black people, and then you have black journalists and black people in the media who will say, "Oh, you know what? He's exactly right. We need to do more." Well, come on. How much of the conversation has to do with what black people need to do, and why do you not include in the conversation at all what this white power structure is doing in terms of debilitating black people? So, I mean, the worst part of the Obama era is that black journalists and Obama have kind of trafficked in this idea that there is something innately wrong with black people. And I think when you look at that's kind of the thing that make people say, you know what, I'm not too concerned about the Voting Rights Act. So what if it's gone? We've kind of passed that era and black people should just do better. Well, you're saying that because you don't have access to the full story, that you haven't read the books and done the stuff that you needed to do to fully appreciate and understand what your community is going through, what your ancestors have gone through, and how we got here in the first place. So I think that in that sense, this Obama administration has been so detrimental. We have traded this black president for our future. We have, and white people view it that way. They kind of view it as, we gave you a black president. That's all, that's what we owe you. What do you want now? And so here we are. And we don't even know, most of us don't even know how we got here. We don't even know how we got to this space where the Voting Rights Act, really, affirmative action is being gutted, really? It's only been 50 years. It's like 50 years since it was put in place. 400 years of oppression, 50 years of whatever affirmative action. It's like, okay, that's enough. This is where we are now. And people, and I'm not even upset necessarily this is where we are. What I'm upset about is that there's not an outcry about what has happened and how it has happened. And people are just sleepwalking through this whole thing as everything that the people fought for in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and even before that, even in the 1800s, all of that has been decimated right now. And people have no idea what's going on.
Well, I agree with you. I'm a mathematician by training, and one of the things that we learned very, very early is that you can't talk about the left side of the equation without talking about the right. And that's pretty much what we're doing in politics. When you wag your finger at black people and tell them what they're doing wrong, it's not to say that what you're saying is incorrect. There are things that you might hear President Obama say that you would also hear Louis Farrakhan say. But the difference is that the Farrakhan or someone like him say would balance the equation. He's going to tell black people what they need to do better, and then he's going to tell white people what they need to do better. He's going to talk about the individual and their accountability. Then he's going to talk about the system and its accountability. When you talk about one side versus the other, then effectively you're showing this kind of political bias that we end up seeing when people talk purely in liberal or conservative terms, or Democrat versus Republican. So I agree with you 100%. I think that we have to have honest conversations, and I think that Cornel West. Here's my my view of the world right now in the age of Cornel West. Those who really believe in what he has to say, you need to take time to really appreciate what this man is bringing to the table. Cornel West he's not a young man. He's not going to be around forever, and he's one of the greatest black voices in America right now, if not the greatest. He's going to be the one that's in the history books. Reverend Al Sharpton will be remembered for being an influencer, and I think he wants to be remembered in the history books in the same context as a Dr. King or somebody else. But that legacy is not for him. If anybody's going to get that legacy, it's going to be Cornel West, because he has the courage to speak that truth to power, to say things that are not popular, to lose money, lose opportunities, lose friends because of what he's doing. Remember, he went from Princeton to Union in New York, and I don't think that it was necessarily an easy or voluntary transition. I think that the people at Princeton got pretty mad at him for pretty much fighting for the losing team. The losing team consists of black, brown, and poor people who don't have the voice. He's speaking up for that voiceless, and he's received, and the reason it's harder for him to do this than it is for the rest of us is because he's been invited to sit next to the king. He's been invited into the castle to receive all the riches that come with selling your soul and being whatever the America wants you to be. But what I think allows him to step away from that is Cornel West has something that a lot of black people can gain from. He knows who the hell he is. He knows who he is. And when you know who you are, when you have your sense of self that's fully developed without the need for material possessions and arbitrary status symbols or lots of money to validate all of that, then that gives you that ability and that courage to do what all of us really want to do at the end, which is to tell the truth. So I think that on one hand, there is an individual struggle where we have to really talk about realigning our value systems to do what's right. At the same time, there is a matter of a lot of these journalists out here, I argue, are just scared, and they're just doing what they think they're supposed to do to be successful. Maybe they've been professionally raised in a world where they think that the only way you are going to get a chance to get ahead is if you sell out a little bit or whatever. And I think that we have to find ways to kind of liberate them and give them that courage to say, you know what, I'm not going to do that because I know that's a lie. So I don't necessarily get mad at them for that. I just think that we have to really confront the holistic picture, not just the individual, not just the system, but both.
Well, let me just be honest. I do get mad. Uh, and let me just be honest. Let me just say what I found so profound in kind of, as we end this conversation. Dr. Cornel West brought up Ella Baker. And I just, the fact that she's probably more important, in terms of how she the movement that she developed in terms of the civil rights movement. When you, like he said, when you speak of Dr. King, you can't help but speak about Ella Baker, because Ella Baker also understands the danger of a Dr. King, the danger of viewing one man as some sort of messiah. You know, the danger of not giving power to poor people, as opposed to like having this one leader kind of talk to poor people. You know, a person who's actually from a middle class black family who's kind of talking to poor people about what should happen. Ella Baker understood that pitfall, and so I'm just so it just really warms my heart to hear him talk about Ella Baker. So he's in a different space. Dr. Cornel West is in a different space than anybody, and I know you have a certain amount of respect for Al Sharpton, and I respect that. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands that that's a place where we disagree. I think Al Sharpton has, for the most part, been detrimental to the legacy of African Americans in terms of everything from the FBI to, you know, he had a fundraiser last week with all the big corporations, some of the biggest offenders of labor rights, like Walmart donating money. I mean, I could go on. This could be a total segment in and of itself. So I think we have to have a sort of reckoning among black people in terms of where do we want to go, and who do we want to be a part of that journey. So I think we have to do that at some point.
Well, I think that our view on Sharpton is actually not that divergent per se, but I think the difference might be that, I just see Sharpton. I don't necessarily, there's some things about him that I choose not to judge per se. At the same time, there are things you have to judge. There are things you have to question, things you have to really bring up in terms of whether or not he's working for himself or for the community, because it does seem to go back and forth. Where I will give him some degree of credit, though, is number one, he's a smart guy. I can't take that away from him. He's one of the smartest people I've ever met. But at the same, but the other thing is, not everything that he has done has always been self-serving. I almost see him really, to some extent, as being a manifestation of what a lot of African Americans do and what they go through. Most black people, they might spend part of their time doing something for the community, fighting the power, fighting for the struggle. But then they spend the other time serving the white man in order to get a paycheck, right? And so you think about that, and to me, what it says, and again, this is not necessarily meant to be a complete critique on Sharpton. As you mentioned, that could be a whole segment, but it really says that a lot of the fundamental or one of the fundamental aspects of our struggle as black people is that white people have the things that we either need or the things that we think we need, right? They have all the money, they have all the power, they own the media, and so therefore you're always in this constant struggle to decide how much selling out am I going to need to do in order to feed my family. And once we get away from that fundamental question, once we learn how to feed our children without depending on white America to do it, then what you see is people are not only free to become more courageous, but they're in a position where they can be courageous without it costing them everything. It's one thing to be able to say, look, I'll take a stand because I'm going to make only 100,000 this year instead of 150,000. It's another thing to say, I'm going to take a stand that's going to cost me everything and have me on the street. And a lot of people are really facing that, including many of these black journalists. So I don't think we can necessarily fault them for having to make those tough choices.
But haven't we always faced it? Black people have always faced that. We've never been free in this country. We've always faced, black journalists today faced a heck of a lot less than black journalists, 200 years ago or 100 years ago. So who are we to say that we can't face it now, that we can't face the possibility of being without work, or we can't face the possibility of being without money when our ancestors faced a heck of a lot more than we did. We have to be creative. We have a website now. We have things that we can do. We have an avenue for ourselves that we can go out on our own if we push it. But the thing about it is, I just have a hard time accepting like excuses, because this is serious business.
I agree with you. I see. I think it's interesting. We're looking at the subtleties here, but I think we're on the same page. I think that if there is a will, there is surely a way, and I think that determination that our ancestors showed is something that we can certainly learn from. I think also at the same time, our ancestors, not only were they more determined, but that resilience was really built out of a different kind of struggle. They were in situations where white people didn't hire you at all. They had no choice but to create their own businesses because white people won't even let you shop in their store. And that's very different from the post-King world of integration, where white folks are like, look, you can shop at our store, you can come work with us, you can live next to us, you can be our friend. You just have to trade off some of that black stuff, shed some of that that black shit, excuse my French, and we'll let you be one of us, right? So you have some black folks that say, okay, you know what? I don't have to carry the black fist and the dashiki when I walk up in there. I'm still, because you got a lot of these, a lot of corporate Negroes. That's what I call them. Not in a derogatory way, but it's true. We've all been a corporate Negro at some point who are fighting the revolution behind closed doors. But when the white man walks in, they straighten up. And my argument is that if we give people tools, if we give them the courage, the tools, and just the self-esteem to stand on their own, then you'll see people that will say, okay, you know what? I've taken this much of your shit, and now I'm only taking this much, and now I'm not taking any of your shit at all. And I think that's where things like education come into play. I think that's where entrepreneurship comes into play. I'm a much braver black man than I would have been if I had never learned how to figured out how to start my own business. I'm much braver when I confront whites if I had not studied my butt off and gotten a PhD, right? So I think giving ourselves those tools is very important. But then the last point on this, and I'm done, I promise, is you have to also have a sense of self and a degree of self-esteem that makes you feel like the battle's worth fighting. It's one thing to be able to fight the battle. It's another thing to feel like the battle's actually worth it. And if you don't have a sense of self, if you don't know black history, if you don't know who you are, if you don't know why you're important, if you don't know why your freedom actually matters, then you're not going to fight that battle. You're going to say, why in the hell? You're going to be like Raven Simone. I'm not African American. I'm just American, right? You're just gonna let it go. Like this stuff ain't even worth it, man. But if you have that, and this is where I think Cornel is really going. This is not just an economic struggle or an educational struggle or political struggle. This is a spiritual struggle. Cornel West is who he is, not because he got a PhD, because he's famous, because he has money. He's who he is because of who he is spiritually, because he was rooted in a tradition that says that selling out for money is not the way to live. And that's what keeps him going every day. Right? So that's what we got to get back to as people. And here's the thing. White people understand this. That's why they take that out of you from the time they send your black butt to public school and teach you about how Europeans invented everything. They don't want you to learn. They want you to learn from this watered down version of Dr. King and not the real version of, say, Malcolm X and what he represented. So it's that self-esteem, that spiritual journey that I think is very important. So that's where you and I end up aligning, is I think that you have a spiritual dimension of who you are that makes you willing to fight that battle. A lot of people don't, and I think people have to be given a pathway to get that. But they have to make that choice too. If you don't make the choice, then it's not going to be for you. You're going to spend your life bowing to white people and then wake up at the age of 80 and be mad that they forced you to live a life that you don't want to live. And I think that's a nightmare in my opinion.
No, I would totally agree with you on that. I think that's a nightmare. I do think people have to make that spiritual choice, and I do think they have to give themselves the tools to make that choice as well. And part of giving yourself, those tools is opening up, some really good books by some really good black thinkers, over the years that really kind of, serve as guideposts for us. So I think if we could turn off the TV for a little while, just long enough to read those people who came before us, who said some very profound things about where we should be, in our spiritual, psychological, emotional, and intellectual development, we'll be well on our way.
Right on. All right. Well, I've talked to you for 28 minutes and 3 seconds, and I plan to talk to you for 8 minutes. But you know, when I talk about Cornel West, I just get excited. I have so much respect for that brother. I think he is so extraordinary, and I miss him already. I don't know if he's gonna die first or I'm gonna die first, but either way. Either way, I'm thinking ahead. I'm thinking about the future, and I think that the best thing we can do for this brother is to really learn from him and to multiply what he's bringing to the table. He's got an extraordinary spirit, and I can say that his personal individual persona is deeply consistent with who he is publicly. So it's not a charade. He's the real deal. And another person who's the real deal is Miss Yvette Carnell at breakingbrown.com. Thank you very much for hanging out with me today, Yvette. I appreciate it.
Anytime, boy.
All right, and I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins, and I'm in Your Black World. You know who I am, and I've done enough talking, so I'm going to stop now and say thank you so much for joining us, and until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.